This is a box. It measures 3 feet long, 2 feet wide, and 2.5 feet deep. That's about the size of your average washing machine, small enough to make you claustrophobic just by looking at it. And inside it is a man, not a magician, not a performer, not someone chasing a world record or social media fame. Just a man, trying to break something much bigger, the system. This isn't fiction, it's not symbolism, it's not performance art, this is history. Real, sweaty, cramped, terrifying, brilliant history. And this is the story of Henry Box Brown, a man who mailed himself to freedom. No exaggeration, no euphemism, no metaphor. He put himself inside a crate, sealed it shut, slapped postage on it, and rode trains, carts, and ships through the belly of a nation built on slavery. All for the possibility, the chance, of something called freedom. This is the story of how that worked, and why it shouldn't have. It's the kind of story that makes you laugh for a second, then feel guilty for laughing. And then, finally, start asking questions about the boxes we still live in today. Let's rewind. The year is 1849. America is not a country of freedom. It is a country of contradictions. A place that screams liberty in its founding documents while keeping millions in chains. A place where a man could quote the Bible on Sunday and sell children on Monday. Henry Brown was one of those children once. Born into slavery in Virginia, he lived most of his early life exactly how the system wanted. Quiet, obedient, useful. He worked in a tobacco factory, made his owners rich, went to church, married, had children. He had, in every sense, adapted to the box of expected behavior, of survival, of staying small enough to not be crushed. And then, in a single day, that box shattered. His wife and children were sold. Just like that. Gone. No notice. No goodbye. No justice. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a rare tragedy. It was policy. In the slave economy, families were as disposable as packaging. The only thing sacred was the price tag. For Henry, that was the moment everything broke. He realized something devastating. He could follow every rule and still lose everything. And when a person has nothing left to protect, they become dangerous. They start imagining the impossible. They start measuring crates. Because if the law said he couldn't walk out as a man, maybe he could be shipped out as cargo. Now stop and think about that. Not just the logistics, the emotion. Imagine your life becomes so unbearable, so tightly controlled, so hopeless, that crawling into a wooden box with no air holes, no light, and no guarantee you'll survive is your best shot. That's not an escape plan. That's a leap into the abyss. But Henry was willing to take it. He reached out to Samuel Smith, a white shoemaker and abolitionist with Underground Railroad connections. Together, they devised something that wasn't just bold, it was absurd. They enlisted James C.A. Smith, another abolitionist, and constructed a wooden crate. 3 feet by 2 feet by 2.5 feet. Just big enough for Henry to curl into. Knees tucked, head down, heart racing. They labeled it dry goods. Classic euphemism. But Henry did have to stay dry. Too much sweat and the crate could rot. The scent could tip someone off. Inside, he carried a tiny flask of water, a few biscuits, and hope. Hope that outweighed the air he could barely breathe. No bathroom, no room to move, no backup plan. Just nails, wood, darkness, and the will to be free. Then it began. Over 27 hours of brutal, bone-jarring travel. Wagons, trains, steamboats, delivery carts. Tossed, turned, dropped, ignored. At one point, the box was flipped upside down for hours. Blood rushed to his head. He almost passed out. He couldn't scream. Couldn't shift. Couldn't make a sound. He was cargo. And if he failed, he'd be dumped like defective merchandise. But somehow, he made it. Philadelphia, the headquarters of the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society. The box was pried open. A group of stunned abolitionists stared inside, and Henry unfolded himself like origami and reportedly said, "How do you do, gentlemen?" That's the moment history snapped. Not just because a man escaped slavery, but how he did it. He didn't run, he didn't hide, he didn't slip away under the moonlight. He hacked the system, used the very infrastructure of his oppression, the postal service, the freight network, public transport, to escape his oppressors. He outsmarted a country that had reduced him to property. And then, he went public. He didn't vanish into anonymity. He spoke. He wrote. He performed. In one of history's most surreal turns, Henry began reenacting his escape live on stage. He'd climb into a replica box, assistants would nail it shut. He'd stay inside, then dramatically emerge to thunderous applause. Depending on who you ask, this was either a radical reclaiming of narrative and trauma, or a disturbing example of suffering turned into spectacle. Maybe it was both, but make no mistake, this was protest. Henry was forcing people to see what they wanted to ignore, to confront the system they benefited from, to ask themselves why such a ridiculous, dangerous, desperate act had worked, and why it had to happen in the first place. But even bold stories don't shield you from backlash. In 1850, the Fugitive Slave Act changed everything. Suddenly, slave catchers had federal law behind them. Even in the so-called free states, no black person was safe. Freedom wasn't a destination, it was a moving target. Henry fled again, this time across the Atlantic, to England. The country that once ran the slave ships was now safer than the country that claimed to be free. He lived there for decades, performed, preached, survived. Eventually, he returned to the US after the Civil War, but his fame had faded. The crowds were gone. The box was silent, and yet, it lingers. Because Henry's box isn't just a story, it's a mirror. It reflects a question we don't always want to ask. What are the boxes we live in today? They don't always look like wooden crates. Sometimes they look like a single mom working 3 jobs without affordable childcare, a trans teen being denied healthcare by politicians, an undocumented worker building houses he'll never own, a student of color punished more harshly than his white classmates for the same behavior. Boxes all around us, tidy, efficient, invisible, until you're the one inside. We've upgraded the packaging, but not the logic. And when someone tries to step out, to resist, to break the mold, what do? We critique. We doubt. We box them in all over again. Just like Henry. People questioned him too. Said he was being too theatrical, as if escaping slavery in a literal box wasn't already the most theatrical act imaginable. But here's the thing. Henry didn't get a fairy tale ending. He got exile, he got freedom, but not full acceptance, not peace. The box set him free, but it didn't free the world. Still, he left us something invaluable, a blueprint for subversion, a protest in wood and nails, a moment where a man emerged not just from a crate, but from centuries of silence. There's a replica of his box at the Smithsonian. Visitors peer inside, snap pictures, shake their heads. Someone always says, "I can't believe he survived in there." But the harder question is, how many didn't? How many never had a Samuel Smith? How many never found a box? How many died quietly, crushed by a system that saw them as inventory? Zoom out, and you'll see it. Another box, the one we live in. So maybe freedom doesn't come with flags and fireworks. Maybe sometimes it comes in a crate. Cramped, desperate, brilliant. And maybe the bravest thing you can do is step out of the box you didn't know you were in. Just like Henry. Because in the end, Henry Box Brown didn't just escape. He created something, a myth, a metaphor, a method. A reminder that no system, no matter how polished, is truly sealed. So if this story moved you, disturbed you, or made you look twice at what freedom really means, good. That's the point. Hit like, share it, step out, and remember, sometimes the most radical act of all is simply getting out.